Thanks everybody for joining. Today's class is called the Garden Calendar class. Let me pull it up on the shared screen. There's not a lot of new info. There'll be some new info, but this class, the intentions of this class is kind of to like lay it all out. We just, I threw a lot of information at y'all in the last, couple classes on that, but it can be confusing. Like when do you do what, so this class kind of we're gonna go month by month and talk about things when we do things and in what order. And again, like a lot of what we're doing, like a lot of this is just like suggestive too, like a lot of people, have they have a lot of different types, they have a lot of different opinions on and I actually learned, I planted a little early, so this last week, so I learned some things I could share with you, like which plants were happy and which were not happy that I planted last week. So but yeah, no, a lot of it's just like trial and error, yeah, we're gonna go through like kind of month by month and just kind of talk about how this all lays out. All right. Well, let me. I'm gonna turn. If you may want to turn off your video, um, or else you might be in the recording. Okay. Cool. Cool. Um, it's okay. All right. So let's get started. All right, so we're going to talk. First, we're going to talk about like just the growing season in DC. DC's got a really great growing season. We can grow a lot, and it's very versatile. So we'll talk a little bit about that, and then after that, we'll go month by month of what we can be doing each month. But so DC is in what we call Zone 7A, hardiness zone. It's like the USDA hardiness zone. This is the map of all the zones. So the higher the number, the warmer the climates are, and the lower the number. This is helpful. Like a lot of times when you're buying plants, especially like plants that aren't native from the area, you want to check that they're what zones. A lot of times they'll say, oh, it can survive in zones 5 through 7 or something. So you want to match that up. A lot of times, a lot of these plants, that are, lower zones. I mean, they can survive the summers, but then you got to dig them up and put them in your a pot in your basement over the winters because they can't do the harsh winters. But so DC's great. The zone, we have a very, very long summer. So most of our growing season is typically a summer season. And then we have, some really short, cool weather seasons, and then a winter that you can turn your fall, crops into a winter garden. So how that typically looks is we have this short spring season where we can start planting. Give or take, we can start planting. We'll talk a little bit more about soil temperatures and things like that. But give or take, we can start sometime in March, and then the hope is you end up harvesting most of the stuff by May. And then around May, the idea is you want to kind of rip off all your cool weather things, or maybe you want to keep a couple things to keep on growing, a little bit longer, maybe if you want to give it some shade. But ideally, you want to rip up, change into a summer garden, and then that starts from May all the way to like November. And that's really like if you're a first-time gardener, I recommend just focusing on the summer garden. It's just like wait till mid-May, buy the plants you want, plant them, water them, all that stuff, and then just grow them until they die, sometime in October, November. I mean, they'll grow for a while, like tomatoes, but they start slowing down just because of the lack of sunlight and the temperatures. A lot of like plants need a decent temperature, a warm temperature to fruit. But that's the easy one. Just do that season and then throw a bag of mulch on your garden. That's a really great beginner gardener. And then when you feel a little bit more confident, you can maybe incorporate a spring garden, with some more cool weather things. But then we have a fall garden too. Is a little bit more trickier than your spring garden, because spring garden you just start. There's nothing to really think about. Like a fall garden. Well, it needs to start around August. And August, you still got most of your crops are growing, in August. So this is when you have to decide, do I want to just keep on growing my tomatoes, till they die, or do I want to rip out my tomatoes and replant another round of kale and collards and broccoli and things like that. So, and that typically starts, people usually start planting either August or early September, and then that goes to like November. And then we have what's called a winter season. So winter season is basically you're just extending your fall season all winter long. So in order to do that, you got to time it right. You got to plant by August or early September. So you want to have big plants around October that are going to be, strong enough to survive. And you may need, we'll have classes on how to build, low tunnels and structures to kind of protect your plants over the winter. But yeah, so I mean that's basically how we're doing. So we have this brief March through May cool weather, then May to November some warm weather summer, and August to November there's overlap here, and that's a fall if you choose to have a fall, and then you extend that fall all winter long as long as you plant early enough and you got some decent sized crops. So again, like, I mean, to get that four season, it takes a while. It takes a couple of years of experience to really get to that four season. So, so normally people start with a summer, and then when they feel confident, they add a spring, and then they feel even more confident, they add a fall, and then they work on, keeping that fall alive all winter. And there's a lot of things you could do, to help that, such as like seedlings, making sure you have nice sized seedlings when you plant in the ground instead of starting from seeds. Structures like, row covers to keep, protect your plants. And maybe if you planted a little too early and all of a sudden there's a frost coming, or, shade structures and things like that. So, there's a lot of flexibility in all this. But that's typically how, four seasons. Um, so yeah, every year, this is a little bit of a confusing graph, and every year I'm like, I'm going to change this, and I completely forget. But so just bear with me. But this is like a layout for a four season, garden, and these are timelines. This is like March to April, May to September, September to February, and then and I took, and then I have two garden beds here. So if you just have like one raised bed, you would want to chop your raised bed in half. And then one side, you can do, you can do two seasons here. You can do a short spring season, like really quick growing, like, greens and things like that. Some like kale and collards, but nothing, like no, Brussels sprouts and cabbages and broccoli and things that take a long time. And then you rip that out in May, and then you plant your summer garden all summer long, and then you rip that out and put like a winter cover crop, or just cover it with mulch or something like that. And then that's two seasons right here. And then to get the additional seasons on the other side of your bed, you grow, a longer spring garden. So this is where you maybe want some Brussels sprouts, some cabbages, some things that are going to take longer. And then, you grow that out to like, give it some shade, in the summer, or just harvest it, when it's getting, when it's about ready in like July, and then rip everything out and do another one, a long fall garden, starting in July or August, give or take, and then just grow that all winter long. So that's one idea of how you do a four season gardens. It really helps to cut your garden in half and think about, doing two seasons per bed. So I'll do a short spring season and a summer season, one side, and then I'll do a long spring, a long fall, and then carry it over the winter. And this area gets tricky, because these guys don't like heat. So you can think about, doing shade tarps, or if everything bolts in June, you can plant some buckwheat, if you just want to like cover it up really quickly, and then, or mulch it, and then you replant it back in July and August. So it's definitely, this is definitely probably the trickiest part, is that summer part. But that's one possibility of how you do a four season garden. So hopefully that wasn't too confusing. I keep on, yeah, I need to redo this slide. So we talked a lot about this in the propagation class. All these different calendars, to find, it's really good if you want to use like this. This is a Johnny Seed Select calendar. If you just look up DC's frost date, last frost date, which is like a generalization. It's definitely not the last frost, but it's a general idea of when, we're starting to, the frosts are going to stop, somewhat. So if you find that, it's different every year, but if you look that up and then get that, find what it is. I haven't looked it up this year, and then plug it into this, and then it'll tell you exactly like what day you should start seeding, and propagating, what day you should plant outside, and all that stuff. It's really detailed. And then there's on the end of this slide, I have a whole bunch of calendars. If you don't want, if you just want more of a conceptual idea of when to plant, what. Um, and then, we show this slide a bunch, and I'll keep on showing this, but this is so important to understand the differences, because I see this a lot. A lot of people are planting into, different, wrong crops and wrong seasons, and it's not going to work out. So yeah, definitely, understand what your summer crops are and your spring and fall crops are. And again, there's no flexibility on summer crops. If any kind of frost touches any of this, they're going to die. And there's some flexibility on cool stuff, especially if you give it a little bit shade, water it. But yeah. All right. So now let's jump into like kind of a month by month of what we can be doing each month. And feel free if anyone has things to add as well. So this is definitely not a definitive list. It's just some ideas. And January is basically your planning month. So that's your seed catalog month. Definitely a great time to order your seed catalogs. They're all free. They'll send it to you. They love sending out seed catalogs. January is also a great time to ask the seed companies for their last year's seeds for free, because they can't sell their last year's seeds this year, because in order to sell seeds you have to have like a 98% germination rate, and every year it falls down. The germination rate falls down, so they can't sell those seeds, so that they usually give them away. So definitely this, January is a time when you want to kind of, reach out to all these seed companies and see what they have. A lot of times they give you like the worst seeds ever that no one wants. Like some company gave me like 50 packets of gourds, and like I have no interest in growing gourds, but other, sometimes you get, like I had a couple of companies that sent me some really great stuff this year. So definitely like review your notes, especially if you're going to do crop rotation. Think about, how to design it, how are you going to rotate your crops, think about that legume, the nitrogen fixing section of like peas and beans, and figure out how to like rotate those around the garden. And then also, if you're overwintering some plants, we're going to talk more about this later, but if you have like, tropical plants like, bananas or lemongrass, or any kind of plants that do well on the outside, in the summer, but then die. There's two things you could do. You can either put them in your basement with grow lights and keep them growing, or you could put them in your basement and kind of let them dry out, and then they go dormant. And but if you're keeping them growing, definitely keep on, checking their health and watering and everything like that. All right. So, and then this is also a great time to think about if you're going to do your seedlings. January is definitely a great time to, think about what kind of setup you want. We went over all this stuff, but think about, how, your lights, your light fixtures, your fixture, the shelving that you're going to be using, and all that stuff. So definitely, yeah. And a lot of times, I mean, some of these like, can sell out kind of quickly, especially seeds lately, or can sell out. So that's why it's good to do all this stuff in January before things start selling out. For sure, since COVID hit, it's been rough. I know some farmers that definitely are struggling trying to find seeds right now. So yeah, January is when you want to order everything. And then if you are, overwintering, and we'll talk more about this towards the end of the class, definitely want to keep on checking the moisture level. What's great about winter gardens is you only have to water them once or twice a month. The soil stays pretty moist, but then it does dry up. And if you don't, catch that, your plants are going to die. So you definitely want to, keep, watering, keep an eye on things, keep mulching and things like that. And, but oh, and if you're using salt in your ice way, your sidewalk, make sure you use calcium chloride instead of sodium chloride, which is much more friendlier for when, because a lot of that stuff ends up washing off into your yards, into your gardens and things like that. All right, so February is when when you can start doing things. A lot of people don't have to. It's up to you, but um, you definitely, if you're going to do a spring garden, you want to start seeding in February. So the idea is you want to seed in February and March, and then plant them out end of March or early April. So you want to have about 2 months. Month and a half to 2 months of indoor growing. And that's all these all the big plants that we talked about in the other class, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, kale, things like that. And then if you want to, you could actually start your warm weather stuff in February as well. But that just means you're going to have to pot them up. So that means you could grow them in like 2-inch cells or whatever, but eventually, they're going to outgrow those cells. So you're good for about 2 months. And then if you're going to go past that, because remember, you can't plant these like tomatoes, peppers, eggplants, you can't plant them until mid-May. So that just means you got to pot them up into like 4-inch containers, and it's just it's more money and it's more work. But the end result is, if you do it, you got these massive tomato plants that you can put in the ground in May, and you're going to have tomatoes in a couple weeks. It's pretty great if you do want to do it. It's just a lot of work. And then again, like fertilizing after you see the first true leaves. True leaves are the ones that actually look like the plant, and then you have these cotyledon leaves that and then all the different things we talked about with seedlings, brushing them, putting fans and things like that, fertilizing things. And then different things you could be doing in your garden. February maintenance, like if you have a winter cover crop, so this is like winter rye or winter wheat, it's a great time, February, to start cutting it down. You want to just cut it down and leave it as a mulch and kind of let it dry out for a little bit. And then and like in March, you would want to kind of chop it up and mix it up and just let it kind of decompose for a little bit, and then it's just like this amazing, beautiful soil once all that organic matter decomposes. Oh, someone says, why do you need to brush germinated plants? Yeah, so I can't remember, maybe I didn't talk about this on that propagation class, but you kind of just lightly brush it with your hand, and what that does is actually it strengthens the stalks. So like, because when you plant your plants, when you first plant them out, I mean, there's going to be like wind and all this stuff that's going to be hitting them, and if they're like just been babied the whole time, I mean, they're going to struggle. But if you have a fan on them, a rotating fan, oscillating fan, and every day, if you kind of just take your hand, just lightly kind of stroke all the tops of the plants, you're going to have really strong, thick stems that are going to be that are going to transplant much better when you plant them outside. I mean, you don't have to. These are just they're they'll still survive, but this will help your plants grow stronger. And then like things like pruning. So we're going to have a whole fruit tree class on pruning. We'll talk more about that, but pruning like your berries, your grapes, your fruit trees, soil tests, February, as long as the ground's not frozen, it's a great time, February, March, to do your soil tests, because it may take a couple weeks to get your results, and then it may take even more, a couple more weeks if you have to do any remedies and things like that. So all these, we already talked about all these things, but doing drainage tests, pH tests, soil tests, things like that. February is the perfect time to do all this stuff. And then somebody was trying to reach out to UDC, and we couldn't find a contact. So I don't think UDC lab is open right now. Just a heads up. Or if someone finds out they are open, send me their contact info. So then we get March. So March, if you're going to do a spring garden, this is when you can actually start to plant things out in March. And that really depends on, a lot of, it depends on the weather. It depends on your soil temperatures. It depends on a lot of different factors. But so you can still seed indoors, your broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cauliflower. You can still, keep on doing, you can seed them in March and then plant them out in April. That's fine. you definitely want to, if you're going to, start doing warm weather things like tomatoes and eggplants, you want to start seeding these indoors, start them as seedlings by March. Because basically, I mean, it's a good idea to give you about a month and a half to 2 months with your seedlings before you want to plant them out. Because anything over 2 months, you're going to have to pot them up, and anything, anything under, it's still, yeah, I mean, it's just not going to be a super strong, it's not going to be a very healthy plant if you just have it for a couple weeks. Definitely, if you're going to do your seedlings in March, you don't have to. You can go in May. You can go to all the garden stores and buy your seedlings, yourself. But if you want to save some money and have some more control over your seedlings, you need to start all your stuff in March sometime. And then outdoors, so outdoors, I definitely I learned some lessons on what can tolerate, be planted outdoors right now. So there's super hardy things. I'm going to show you a slide later on about the really hardy plants. But those are like cabbages, spinach, parsnips, potatoes. Potatoes you could do early March, for sure. Peas and things like that. So these you can directly seed in March. I'm going to show you a slide in a second about soil temperatures. If you want to do early March, I would recommend getting a soil thermometer and then just monitoring the temperatures. But if you wait till about mid-March, all these things are going to be fine. And then ideally, if you want to plant in early March, like really the only thing that's going to be super hardy enough is going to be cabbage. But then the last half of March, it's always a gamble. I did the gamble this year because I have a rooftop farm, and so the soil warms up a lot quicker than if it was in the garden. So I really wanted to push it. So I planted all my broccoli, cabbage, collards, kale, lettuce heads, romaine lettuce. I did it in mid-March, which is a little bit risky. And actually, everything but the kale was happy. The collards did really well. Even the romaine lettuce, I thought the lettuce was going to struggle, but it did really well. The cabbage was super happy, but I lost about half of my kale plants. They were not happy. So definitely going to wait till April 1st, before planting kale in the future. But I think, like collards and broccoli and cabbage, I think you can get away with mid-March. You can plant them, but that's all. It depends on if there's like harsh weather coming. There was like a frost that came a couple days after I planted, and I should have monitored the weather and waited a little bit, because if I would have waited, I mean there was been no frost since that, since mid-March. So the kale might have been more happier, but so definitely, if you want to risk it, and the reason why people would want to risk it is you're going to have bigger plants, you're going to have a head start, but it's risky. You could lose some things. So if you don't want to risk it, just wait till April 1st, and you can plant any cool weather stuff by April 1st. You'll be fine. But mid-March, if you want to if you want to risk it a little bit. And this is also a great time. March is when you want to dig up your perennials, because they're all dormant right now. So if you have like rhubarb and oregano or like rosemary, like big woody thick plants, it's a great time. It's not only healthy for the plant, because once it gets so woody, you're not going to be able to harvest much, and it just overgrows itself. So it's healthy for it, and you'll have a whole bunch of the plant. So with these things, you just dig up the root ball, and then just chop it in a bunch of pieces, and then plant those pieces around your garden, put them in pots, and then all of a sudden you have a dozen rhubarbs instead of one. So March is a good time, and especially if you're like doing things like transplanting trees or anything that's like going to be like really invasive to your plants. You do that around March, because most like perennials are still dormant, meaning they're kind of asleep, and so you could do a lot damage to them when they're asleep, and they don't really mind. But once they wake up, it's pretty. You don't want to transplant perennials or divide them or anything like that. All right, so if you do want to plant in early March, I definitely recommend getting a soil thermometer. They're just a couple dollars, because it's really like the temperatures isn't so much about the the weather, the air temperature is more about the soil temperature. It may be like, like 70 degrees out, but if it's in March, that soil is going to be still be like 30 or 40 degrees. And that's really what you want. And so I had this guideline. This is for germination. So, but that's a good indicator of like, if it's warm enough to germinate a seed, then you're good enough to plant an actual seedling. So you got your super hardy things, your kale, your lettuce. Well, actually, I would disagree on kale, but like parsnips and peas and spinach, it only needs to be 40 degrees and 50 degrees. Cabbage and chard and things like that. Oh, I did plant chard too, and chard wasn't too happy as well. But I didn't lose that. I only lost a couple chard, but it was mainly kale that was not happy. And then 60 degrees, you could start doing some warm weather things. And then 70 degrees is typically when you can grow anything. Like all the warm weather stuff was fine in 70 degrees, and that's usually around mid-May is when your soil reaches 70 degrees. So definitely, if you want to get really scientific about it, you want to plant as early as possible. Get a soil thermometer. But like I said, it's not for everybody. If you want to play it safe, just wait for April 1st. And then you want to harden plants off as well, because like I was saying, this is one of the reasons why you want to have, you want to brush your plants, and you want to have, a oscillating fan on them, is because you want to harden them up. Because when they're in the greenhouse in the perfect conditions, they're just used to perfect conditions, and then you put them outside with like harsh wind, the rain, and all kinds of things. They're just going to have a huge, they're going to, either die or have a harsh transplant shock, and kind of, and it may take, it may stun them a little bit, or it may just slow down your growth, and you have to wait a week for them to kind of bounce back before they start growing again, which is, it's not the worst thing in the world, but you just you lose some of your timing on that. So hardening, there's a lot of different ways to harden. A lot, like technically, I think by the book you should, it should be like a whole week where you bring them outside in like a partially shaded, partially covered, not too harsh, but not like, too nice either area. And then, first day for like an hour, and then bring them out the second day for 2 hours, and third day for 3 hours, and all that up until 7 days. And that's if that's in the if you have the time to do that, like if you work at home, right now, which is a lot of people are, that's easy to do, but most people can't do it. Like I've never done a whole 7 days of hardening. I usually do it in like 1 or 2 days, where I'll just bring them outside and in a partially shaded, partially sunny area, and just leave them out for a couple hours. You really want to make sure to bring them back in, because especially in like March, if it may still frost at night, and if it freezes, if you leave these guys out in their containers and it freezes, they may not survive. But that's why a lot of people get these cold frames, where you can actually leave them in the cold frame. You open up, and then when it's at night, you close them. So they're like little mini greenhouses. Yeah, it's nothing. Like some people don't do this at all, and just like accept the fact that they're going to lose a couple plants. And some people, like myself, I'll try to do it all in 1 day or 2 day. But if you have the time, try to spend as many days as you can on this process. And then March is a great time if you're going to double dig. If you're going to, if you have that, cover crop and you chopped it all down, you definitely want to, mix it, in March, you want to mix it all up, chop it up and mix it up. So it breaks down nicely into your soil. And just becomes awesome plant food. Day of planting, yeah, definitely it's a good idea to cover, whole garden with compost. Ideally you want to, and not everyone can do this, but if you have enough compost, ideally you want to cover your whole garden with like 2 inches of compost, and then till it all in. Most people don't have that much compost, but just try to get as much compost as you can, spread it out as thinly as you can, and just mix it up. And then yeah. Then April. So April, if you haven't started your warm weather plants yet, and you want to do them, start them in April. This is your last chance to do some seedlings. Definitely as early as possible. And then outdoors, I mean, April 1st, I mean, you're just free to plant any kind of cool weather stuff at this point, unless there's like some freak frost, storm or something. But other than that, like you're good on anything cold weather at this point. You could seed all these things outdoors. You can plant your transplants outdoors, all that stuff. And there's even there's a few warm weather things that they're kind of tolerant, like fava beans. If you want to do fava beans, you can plant these in April. But yeah, and just make sure to harden off. Epsom salt is a great if you do have transplant shock. So transplant shock is just like your plant is just not ready for this harsh conditions, and it's just it may like go limp for a couple days. It may look really sad. Usually they bounce back. It's amazing how like a leaf will be completely limp and then the next day it'll be like rigid straight up in the air. So a lot of times they do bounce back, but just you want to try to avoid the transplant shock as much as possible. And that is like harden them off, be as gentle as possible when you plant them. But another thing you could do is give them some magnesium. Like Epsom salt has a lot of magnesium in it, and that kind of helps with the transplanting shock. I don't know how it does. I'm not but I'm told it does. And so you just get a cup full of Epsom salt and kind of dump it in the watering can, and then mix it up, and then water your plants that you just planted, and it helps helps a lot. So I have a question: if you add mulch, do you add it on top of the compost? No, I mean you want to mix in so you want to like you spread out all your compost and then you till it all in, and then you would add your mulch. If you're doing a non-till, you would still do kind of same thing, and then use a pitchfork or a broad fork and just kind of break it up, and so there's still going to be some on the top, but that's fine. And then I wait till after you plant your plants, and then I'll add some mulch, like no more than like 2 inches of whatever you add, or it's going to stop, water from actually getting to the plant. But mulching's huge. Mulching will that's the difference between having to water every day and getting away with watering like 2 or 3 times a week. And then someone says pest row covers. Yeah, so we're gonna have a whole class on pests. But yeah, if you know you have pests in this area, the idea is you want to get this row cover down. Whether it's like if you're just seeding things, it's called a floating row cover, where you just like throw it on the down and you weigh it down with rocks, or if you build like an actual hoops and a low tunnel, if you're doing like kales and collards and like bigger plants. So if you know you have a bug problem and you want to lay it down, a lot of times you don't do this stuff your first year, or if you didn't have a bug problem the year before, you're not going to lay this stuff down. But if you know you have a huge problem with this stuff, then you want to lay it down before the bugs come, because if you lay it down while the bugs are there, you actually trap them in here, and then they're super happy as they eat all your plants. So you will definitely want to put them down before the bugs are going to come out, and we're going to talk more about when the bugs come out as well. But yeah, definitely think about that. But like I said, if you don't have a bug problem or a pest problem, don't worry about pest covers until you have that problem. But they work really well. So someone says Stacy says I use row covers for green beans and cucumbers, and they work well. Yeah, especially cucumbers. If you have a problem with cucumber beetles, which we'll talk about in a second, they're the worst. They look like ladybugs, but they have, instead of red, they have yellow ear dots or stripes. If you see one, they're a little hard to squish, but you want to spend 5 minutes squishing them, because they don't do much damage. They chew just a little bit off your cucumber, but they have this bacteria in their stomach that will kill your whole cucumber plant. I don't think all of them have it, but I think it's very common. So if you ever see a whole cucumber plant just die, that's from a cucumber beetle. And if you have a bad, it's hard. If you have them real bad, like the best thing to do is use row covers and put them on before the cucumber beetles come out. But yeah, we'll have a whole class on pests and what to do with that stuff. Yeah, so April maintenance. So if you planted in March, you might be harvesting some things by now. most of the stuff is usually early, May, but lettuces and stuff that is coming up. I mean, this is what we call, cut and come again. We'll talk about this later, but we talked a little bit about it in the last class as well. But think, your loose greens, your broccoli. If you did it right, I mean, if you had a fast enough start, you can start harvesting broccoli. But like I said, most of the stuff isn't going to be ready to probably like, maybe late April, early May. Peas, for sure, peas grow really quickly, root crops and stuff. So we're gonna have a whole class on how to harvest all these things as well. Um, so yeah, but and then trellises, pea trellises are things to think about. But I'll just go over a couple of tips real quick. Like kale, like the big leaf stuff, like kale and collards and stuff. You want to kind of you want to snap, pull downwards and snap the plants off. And you want to harvest from the bottom, and you want them to basically look like palm trees eventually. And if you do that, some people they do that in spring, and then they give it a little bit of shade over the summer, and they keep it growing. And by like fall, you could have like a 4 or 5, even like 6-foot kale plant. I've seen huge kale plants. And they just keep on, the idea is you don't harvest more than like a third of them, at a time, and then they just keep on growing, and you can get, once a week you can get, a decent amount of kale from them. Lettuce, there's all different ways to harvest lettuce, but I think the best one is to grab a handful and take a sharp knife and cut it, but leave like 1 or 2 inches there, and then it will regrow, once or twice. And broccoli, you want to wait until like the little florets. Each one of these is like a little mini flower. You want to wait till they're about the size of a matchtip, and then you want to harvest the top, and then there'll be a bunch more that will appear in the next month on the bottom. And you can also eat any part of the broccoli. Like the leaves are super delicious. They're like a sweet collards. The stalks are super delicious as well. We'll have a whole class, or at least on our in our harvesting class, we'll talk about all the weird things that people don't eat that are really delicious. But yeah, and peas, you want to do that little, take your thumb and do like an upward snap, and it should just snap right off. Peas, you want to harvest peas every day. The more you harvest, the more it produces. It's like pruning it. And so try, once your peas start, once you start getting some pods, and each one you have to do your research. All the pods you harvest them, either when they're full or half full, or it's all different. But you want, once they start ripening, you want to get them as soon as possible, because the quicker you harvest, the more peas you're going to get. And root crops, it's like a diameter. You look at the top of the thing, and like radishes, you can harvest at like half an inch, or carrots are like, I think, like an inch or two. Beets, you don't want to get more than 3 inches, or they're getting woody. So like I said, we'll have a whole harvesting class, as well as we'll have a whole class on pests. We'll have actually a couple classes on pests, some on insects and some on mammals. Lots of things out there trying to get your crops. But these are things. So in spring, typically around April or May, when it starts warming up, these are the bugs that start coming out. And the worst bug, the crops that are in the most danger are brassicas, for sure. Like your cabbage, your kale, your collards, mainly because of these guys. Cabbage loopers, they're the worst. They come out with these little white flies. They lay little eggs underneath that look like this, and then they hatch, and then there's little inchworms that just like demolish your brassicas. But they're actually really easy to spot. Like the best way to handle them is actually just look for them every day. Like go out, and they're usually on the underneath the underside of the leaf. Sometimes they're in the middle of like the stalk area, but they're pretty easy to see once you identify them, and you can squish them or knock them into like soapy water or whatever. And like, yeah, you can handle them just by checking them every day. Or if you're not going to check them any day, there's like some really great sprays like BT, which is like this bacteria that just eats them all. That works really well. And slugs, if you're using mulch, you might get, you're increasing. That's the only downside of mulch, is you're increasing your chance of slugs. And so if you ever see like, leaves that are being chewed on, you might have a slug. So like beer traps and work really great. Going out at night with a headlamp and squishing them. Aphids, aphids are yeah, I mean they're like these little sap suckers. They suck out the sugars and the leaves, and then they poop out the sugary water. Makes your leaf look like a shiny. So that yeah, if you have aphids at this point, it's probably because you had some aphids in your seedlings. But they could come out, but like you know, aphids, you could squish them, you could spray them. If you plant, you know, native plants and pollinator plants, and attract ladybugs just demolish aphids. So you know, creating some kind of ecosystem. We'll talk all about that in the pest class. If you look like if your leaf looks like it was shot by like a shotgun, these are leaf miners. Or no, well, I labeled that wrong. These are flea beetles. Sorry, I need to fix that. So flea beetles, they really love eggplants. That's why a lot of people will they'll grow their eggplants, and actually, you know, they'll try to really get them big before they plant them out, because typically they don't kill your leaf unless it's like a small seedling, and then these flea beetles may kill your plants. But if you're buying eggplant, like, you know, a seedling, try to get the biggest one, even if it's a couple of dollars extra, because like I said, if it's a healthy big seedling, these guys won't kill them. They'll just, you know, maybe stunt them a little bit, but if it's a small seedling, they could take them out. Like neem oil. Neem oil is this organic oil from a tree in India. Just make sure it's 100%, or if it's cut with something, make sure you're okay with what it's cut with, like some kind of pesticide or herbicide. And then leaf miners, they don't do too much damage, but if you see this like cool pattern, that's because there's a little bug in between the layers of the leaves that are just eating its way through the leaf. So if you see that, just cut off a leaf and throw that into the trash. But like I said, we'll have a whole class on those types of insects. And then May is when like the May is probably the most exciting month, because that's when you can start your summer garden. Typically, I mean, you don't start right with May. Some people wait till Mother's Day, which isn't more towards the beginning. Some people wait to mid-May. Again, if you want to be 100% safe, wait till June 1st before you plant your warm weather stuff. But typically, I mean, especially now, I know it was like a decade ago, there was like a freak frost in mid-May, and a lot of people lost stuff. But I just, especially with the climates warming up and stuff, I don't think that's going to happen. I mean, anything's possible, um, but yes, usually I wait till like mid-May, and then I just plant any warm weather thing. And then some of the cool weather things, again, like carrots and beets, they do well, or if I'm going to provide shade, I could do lettuces, I could do, collards and chard and kale will grow most of the summer, especially to give it a little shade. But for most part, all the warm weather stuff that you've been growing indoors or you went out and bought, you can plant, you can direct seed. As well. And then so then we talked a little bit about this too, about there's two options. You can either just completely rip out your spring garden, throw some compost, mix everything up, and then plant a whole summer garden. But if you do that, then you got to wait, a couple months before it starts, producing again. Or you can slowly, as you're harvesting these lettuce heads, pull the lettuce head out and then put a pepper plant in. And then slowly kind of like over like a month or two, slowly transition your garden to a warm weather to a cool weather, or maybe rip off half of your plot, all the cool weather things, and then plant summer things, but then keep your cool weather things for another month. So it's a mixture of things. So it's all preference and what you want to do. All right. And then some things to look out for, like if you're growing garlic. So garlic is a real weird season. You grow it in like October, you plant it in October. It may sprout, it may not in the fall, but then you keep it mulched over the winter, and then right around April, May, it will start sprouting again. Well, actually sooner than that, it will start sprouting, and then eventually around May it wants to flower. So it sends this crazy looking thing up. It does a couple of spirals and then it flowers. This is called a garlic scape. And if you can actually, it's super delicious. It's like this tender, garlicky kind of thing. You can eat it raw. You can chop it in a salad. You can cook it. But it's, you want to get it before it gets too woody. Usually I let it do one circle. and then I'll cut it out, because then that's like, it still stays tender. But usually by the time it does the second circle or it starts going up, it gets woody and it's just not good anymore. And you definitely don't want it to flour, because if it flours, then all this energy from that it's storing into your garlic, goes up into the flour, and then it's just not, your garlic's not that great after that. And then like we talk about this kale and a lot of brassicas, when they flower, a lot that's usually time to rip them out. But instead of ripping them out, if you want to wait a couple of days, and actually you can cut out the flowers of these this is a kale plant, and this is what a kale flower looks like, and you can actually cut it out, and it's a real delicious like broccoli rabe kind of thing. So I usually wait for that to happen, then I'll rip my plant out. You definitely don't want to keep bolted plants in too long, because they'll start deteriorating, and then that's really what attracts like pests and diseases, or like unhealthy plants. But definitely by May, you're going to be doing a lot of, a cool weather harvesting. And then May is when you need to decide, do I want to rip everything out and do a summer garden? Do I want to, get some shade cloth and do a long spring garden and then a long fall garden? Or do I want to do a little bit of both? Do I want to have half a spring garden with some shade, or half a fall garden? But at this point, it's a good idea to either think about some kind of shade cloth, or plant tomatoes, or some kind of tall plant, and on the south side of your cool weather plant, so it gets some partial shade. um so there's a question: when you remove crops, rip up cool weather things, do you always have to add compost in the soil? No, definitely not. I mean, it's a good idea. If you completely rip off your spring garden, anytime you have a whole bare garden, might as well throw some compost and mix it up. But you don't have to, and especially if you're only ripping out a little bit at a time. You can either add a handful of compost, in there, or just kind of throw it in there as well. And so this is more of like a non-till kind of a practice, as opposed to ripping it all up, putting compost in, and then tilling it all up. But anytime you have a complete blank slate, it's a good idea to work in some compost what way you can. But you definitely don't have to. Really, you really only, need to add compost like once a year, at the minimum. So if you add a little bit at the beginning of the year, you're fine. But if you keep on adding them throughout the year, top dressing, or whenever you have a chance, it will improve. It's just like it's just like fertilizer. All right, so right around May and June is when we start getting our summer insects. So these are the infamous cucumber beetles. These are the worst. So like I say, I mean, they don't do much damage. They only bite a little hole. They don't eat much. But then if they have that bacterial welt in their stomach, they can infect your whole plant, and you can lose your whole plant. So again, like if you see these and make sure they're yellow. I mean, if they're red, then you don't want to kill they're a ladybug. But if they're yellow with these stripes and dots, you want to take the time, yeah, if you possible. I mean, they're a little tricky to kill, but you want, it's, I always take a couple minutes and try to hunt them down. It's a good idea. But if you do have a whole bunch of them, sometimes if you have a couple of them, I mean, it's not going to do too much damage. But if you get a bunch of them at one year, you may want to think about row covers the following year, just to, keep them away. Because they're a lot. I mean, if you have an infestation, they're really hard to handle. If you just have a couple of them, they're not too bad. Japanese beetles. So anytime you're digging in the hole and you see these grubs, uh, most of there's only like 2 or 3 different kinds of white grubs, and they're all not good for your garden. So anytime you see that, pull them up and throw them in the grass. A bird will eat them, squish them. Most likely, they're Japanese beetle. And Japanese beetles, they mainly like defoliate. They're like cicadas, where they come out for a brief period, and a lot of times they definitely. And most of the damage I've seen, they attack fruit trees, like they just like eat all the leaves on the fruit trees. And there's some really easy sprays. There's this like a kaolin clay spray that works really well. This like organic a clay spray and they hate it, so you just spray anything over, and they'll go away. But they're not too bad. the cucumber beetle, these are the eggs for cucumber beetles. It's a good idea, once a week just to kind of, look underneath all your big leaves and see if you can find some eggs or not. Because if you can catch them, the eggs, so much easier. Like Harlequin beetles, these guys can, there's different years. This is what's tough in community gardens, because it's like, there's always one person that's not taking care of their garden plot, and they always have an infestation of harlequin beetles, and then all of a sudden, the whole garden has infestation. Because if you can catch them early, they're not a big deal. And there's some really great trap crops, like if you do like sunflowers, or there's a, I can't remember the name. There was this flower we did last year that they just loved it so much, and they hang out there, and then it's like really easy to squish them or knock them into soapy water, or find their eggs. Squash vine borers, if you ever have a whole section of squash that just dies, check the base, and if there's holes in them, you gotta cut open the squash stems are hollow, so you gotta cut them open and find this little maggoty, squish them, and then bury this whole area in wet dirt. It's like doing surgery. There's a good chance you're going to kill your plant, but the plant's going to die if you don't do anything anyways. White flies, it just looks like little funguses, but then they fly everywhere. Spraying them works well. Tomato hornworms, squishing them, and then sometimes they get parasitic wasps. If you ever see little white egg sacs, coming out of them, leave them, because that's a parasitic wasp that's going to eat the insides and then come out, and then there'll be lots of parasitic wasps that's going to those, they're really tiny. They don't bother humans, but they love killing your bad pests. And then squash bugs, look, I think they're similar family, or look similar to harlequin beetles. Just doing daily checks on their leaves, trying to find the eggs, or squishing the adults when you find them. It's like the best thing you could do. It says our whole community garden has not planted cucumbers for 2 years to break the cycle. This year we have been planting the cukes again. That's awesome. That's such a great community garden. Like I know some community gardens that would be impossible to get to do, but yeah, that's perfect. I mean, if cucumber beetles mainly look for cucumber plants, and plant. There's probably a couple other plants they like too as well. But if you know that and you have a bad problem, yeah, just like taking 2 years off, and then they'll go away, and they'll find some other place to lay their eggs and terrorize. So yeah, that's awesome. That's an awesome garden. And then yeah, like we said, there's definitely, if you're going to be growing cool weather things during the summer, it's a good idea around May, early June, to think about ways to start shading them through shade cloth, through planting them in between rows, or on the north side of tall plants. There's all different kinds of ways, but ideas, you want to break up the sunlight by like half. You don't want to completely shade it. They still need sunlight, but you want to break it up so it's not cooking in the sun. And then June plantings. So again, like I said, June 1st is like the safe date. So if you want to wait, to be completely safe, you can plant anything, warm weather, as much as you want out. So by June, direct seed transplants, all that stuff. And then if you want to get a real big start, if you don't mind potting up for a fall garden, if you want to plant a fall garden in August or September, you could actually start doing your seedlings. You can do them indoors, and also you can grow them outdoors as well, because usually when they're seedlings, they're not as susceptible to the heat, as long as you're watering them every day. But again, if you start now, you're going to have to pot up. It's like starting in January or February for warm weather. So most people wait till about July to start their fall crops. June maintenance. So garlic is ready in June. And basically it's ready when like the bottom half is brown, the top half's still green. You pull them out, you hang them. You got to cure them so they last a long time. So you can hang them for like a couple weeks and let them dry out a little bit. So June's a great time to start building trellises. You want to get the trellises in as early as possible, so you're not like destroying too much roots. You're not damaging the plant while installing it. June is a great time to start pulling the suckers and pruning your tomatoes. Squishing bugs and watering and mulching. And then we're going to talk more about this in another class, but June's a great time. A lot of your warm weather crops, your herbs, you want to start, thinking about pruning them. Because the reason why you prune them is you actually stimulate growth when you prune things. If you prune them right, and then you'll have so much more like basil. Basil, anything in the mint family. Too as well. Anything with like square stems. If it has a square stem, it's in the mint family. But basil is particularly like if you just put grow one basil plant, and just let it grow, with a single stalk, you'll get some basil, but not a whole lot. What you want to do is you want to make your basil into a bush, and how you do that is like once you start getting some good growth, a couple leaves, you want to prune it. You want to pluck out the a stem, the top stems, like at least like a couple times a week, or at least once a week, you want to pluck the top leaves off of each one of your branches. So you do the first one, you pluck that off, and then these little dormant buds, they start growing, and then they become, two, new branches, going out in different directions. And then you wait till those get leaves, and you pluck off the tops of those, and all of a sudden you have 4 branches, and you pluck those, and you have 8 branches, and all of a sudden, you do this for a couple of weeks, you're going to have this huge basil bush that you're going to get so much more basil than normal. So that's, a lot of your soft stuff, you can do that, well, like your soft, like kind of flimsy branches, but your more woody stuff, you want to harvest them as much as possible with like pruners. So as like oregano and rosemary and lavender, you want to you want to start pruning. You want to leave a third of the branch and at least a third of the plant. But I mean, you're never going to, especially if you have a big perennial, you're not going to use the whole thing. So the idea is you want to, as much as possible, at least as much as you use this plant, you want to cut off, a branch down to a third. And if you keep on doing that, you're going to stimulate more growth. There's going to be more branches, and you're going to get another, healthier, more productive bush as well. And then July. So July is like, so if you're planning on doing a fall garden and you want some seedlings, July is when you need to start your seedlings in your house. Again, you can do it in your basement under lights. You can grow them outdoors, as long as you water them really well and keep them protected. Yeah, definitely need to start your broccoli, your cabbages, your collards and things like that. So because the idea is you want to plant them out in end of August or early September. And then July maintenance, if you see cracking, make sure to, add some more mulch, keep on looking for pests, blossom, this is blossom rot. It's a calcium deficiency. I mean, they're still good edible, but they're not going to last very long. So that oftentimes is your calcium deficiency, which also oftentimes like your soil has enough calcium. It's just the conditions aren't right. A lot of times it's like infrequent moisture levels and things. So like mulch will help that. Begin to hand pollinate. Continue pruning. Things like that. Harvesting. So hopefully by July you're starting to get some summer crops. Like tomatoes. It's you just have to kind of research a little bit. Sometimes it's like it's the color, sometimes it's the firmness and softness, sometimes they're aromatic, but definitely do a little research. Make sure you know what your tomato plant, what color it's going to be, and but oftentimes it's soft as well. Then like peppers, peppers all depends on what types of peppers you get. A lot of my bell peppers will go change different colors, so you harvest them what color you want. Some peppers are specifically made for red, green, or yellow, so it just depends on that. You definitely want to cut the peppers off. Don't just pull them off, or they could do some damage to the plant. Beans are very similar to peas. Do that upward thumb push and it just pops right off. But do a little research about your beans. All the beans, they all look different when some of them, like to be real plump, some of them like half plump, potatoes, when all the tops, died back, that's, a good time to start digging them up, root crops as well. Yeah. But like I said, we'll spend more time on how to harvest all these things and then how to actually cook them as well. But okra, you definitely don't want to get okra when it's like no more than 4 inches, because then it starts getting really woody and there's not a whole lot you could do once they're woody, except for seed save them. But yeah, and then also okra, like the more you harvest, the more productive it'll be. Squash, summer squash, you want that, you want to be able to, you want them to be tender. Winter squash, you want them to be hard. Corn, you want it to, you want the silk stuff to be brown, and then you can actually check on the kernels. You can break it open with your fingernail, and you want the juices to look really milky. Eggplants, you want to be, you want to get them while they're still shiny, and starting to get somewhat tender. Yeah, this is the eggplant that you waited too long, and once they start getting dull, and they get really woody, and they're pretty disgusting at that point. Watermelons, everyone's got a trick with watermelons, like the knocking, the hollow trick. Kind of works, but also there's different things. Just checking out the colors, the different, especially like the color of this is, when the part that touches the ground, when it gets more like mustardy yellow, that's a good sign. When the green gets more defined. Sometimes in the vine there'll be these little vines sticking out. When they start curling, that's a good indicator. A lot of times it's good for watermelons and like pumpkins and stuff. Harvest one as a test before you harvest all of them. For sure. Like melons, like a lot of them, like it has to do with rinds and it smells. There's some certain melons that smell a certain way when they're ripe, and yeah, and like cucumbers, you want to just know, if it's a pickling cucumber, if it's a big cucumber, you want to like know the size of it, and you want to get it when it hits that size, but no bigger, because if it gets bigger, it starts getting yellow and nasty. So you want to get it, while it's like it's normal size, and it's pretty green. All right, but yeah, we'll talk a lot more about harvesting in another class. But also, this is a great time to do hand pollination. We talked about this last class with the squashes, cutting off the male flowers and then hand pollinating all the female flowers, or the corn, putting when the pollen's ready, putting paper bags over it, and then taking that same paper bag and putting it over your silk, and that's gonna ensure you have 100% pollination rates. And then we hit August. So August is the time when you need to decide, like, do I want to keep this, summer, crops growing? Because especially like, your tomatoes are usually doing really well by now. And they'll start slowing down though, like, especially when it starts cooling off, like September, October, they'll really start slowing down. But August, I mean, they should be still producing a lot. So you need to decide, do I want to rip out all of it, a section of it, and then do I want to plant a fall crop or not? And so August, you can start, seeding, even if it's pretty late, you can still start seeding indoors if you want to plant early September, or you can seed outdoors, or you can plant your transplants. It's a good idea to give it a little bit of shade if possible, like do some kind of shade cloth or plant them behind like tall summer plants, because like August can be really hot and harsh. So you want to, you want to give them some kind of like shade if possible, and make sure to water them really heavily. So you can start your fall garden in August. You can also wait till early September as well. So yeah, definitely think about shade cloths. Continue doing tomato pruning, all that stuff. And then September, if you're going to do a fall garden, it needs to be in the ground as early as possible in September. You don't, early to mid-September. You need to. You can wait longer if it's like fast-growing things, like loose lettuce and like mustard greens and radishes and things like that. But for the most part, oh yeah, I don't. I need to take that out. Don't plant potatoes in the fall. Those are you need to plant in the spring. But you can seed indoors. Or no, you can seed outdoors. If you have any transplants at this point, go ahead and put them in the ground. If you don't have transplants right at this point, you want to get the biggest ones possible from the store, because ideally you want to get them like mature by October. Because if they're mature by October, then you can grow them all winter long. But they haven't, really, achieved, if they're still pretty tiny by October, there's just not enough sunlight to get them mature by the time winter comes, and they're not going to survive the winter. Which doesn't mean, you can still harvest them. You'll just have to harvest them all by like November. But also something to think about too, if you want to do cover crop, September is when you could do, especially like white clover or cover crop, which is a great nitrogen fixer. You got to do that by September. Once it gets too cold, white clover won't germinate. You can still do winter rye and winter oats, up to like October, November. But if you want to do a clover cover crop, a nitrogen fixing, definitely got to think about planting in September. And again, that's like you just kind of broadcast, you get a hard rake, you rake up the soil, kind of broadcast them, lightly, spray. They're really small seeds, and then kind of cover them up, water them, mulch them. And you want to keep on watering them until they're established. At a certain point, you don't really need to water them anymore, but definitely at least a month you want to water them really well. Someone asked, can you intersperse cover crops, winter crops? Yeah, you totally can. Your winter crops aren't going to be as happy, but we did that this year in one of our gardens because I really wanted to plant out. I had a bunch of extra collards and kale plants. I really wanted to plant them out, but I also really wanted to do a cover crop. I try to do I try to completely, I try to do a cover crop for at least one of my beds every year, and then I rotate that bed every year. That cover crops in a different bed, so that way I can I kind of rotate it so I can add so like a 4-year cycle. I'm adding nutrition throughout there. But so I really wanted these kale plants, but I also really wanted to sow in some winter wheat and winter rye. So I actually did both, and they actually worked really well. It was weird. I don't know if I took a picture, but it was basically, imagine like tall grass, and right in the middle of that tall grass you have like kale and collard plants growing out of it. I mean, they definitely probably would have done a lot better. It was pretty competitive, but they still, we harvest them all fall. So it definitely, you can intercrop them. Just know it's going to slow down whatever you intercrop, So Stacey says that's what I do: cover crop in a couple beds each year, then rotating beds. I get a nice cover crop mix from Territorial Seeds. Cool. Yeah. They have great cover crops, Southern Exposure, Johnny Seeds. Yeah. I like the cover crop mixtures. It'll have different stuff like the white, some of them have all of these, and it's kind of, so you get a mixture of things. Just like the only thing to be aware of is hairy vetch is a nitrogen fixer, and it could be a little hard to kill in spring. It can spread around a little bit. So just be careful of that. And also know winter rye, winter wheat is kind of a lot of work. Chopping these things up and mixing them up in the spring. As of like white clover is probably the easiest one, but you got to plant white clover early. And then is something to think about is when we start getting to October, November, you're going to have some frost, and there's a lot of these plants. Why they're able to survive in the cool weather environments is they convert carbohydrates to sugars in their cells, because their cells are mainly made up of water, sugar water freezes at a lower temperature. So when there is a frost on all these different plants, they actually get sweeter. Like especially, I don't know why I didn't write collards up here, but collards especially get super sweet after a frost. Same with kale and broccoli and all that. So it's definitely something to think about. That's one of the reasons why people really love winter gardens. It's not as productive, it's slow growing because there's not enough, there's not a whole lot of sunlight, but it's just, they taste really, really good, winter greens. So this is a great chart if you want to know, which things, are super hardy, which things need some protection, and which things, are not. So the really hardy ones, like cabbages, collards, I would argue kale after my experience, but spinach and parsnips, and then half hardy are like your chard and Chinese cabbages and things that may need some protection. You may need some row covers, and then you have some tender stuff. All right, so September. So now we're getting into so things to do in September. So hopefully your sweet potatoes are about ready to harvest. A lot of your potatoes, especially if you do long season potatoes, they're probably about ready right about now. Onions as well, the big bulbs. If you do large bulbs, you can harvest onions at different times. Like spring onions are just basically normal, bulb onions that you harvest early. And then you can, at different times. But if you want the big bulbs, you plant onions. Onions have a long season. That's why you should probably get either get them as bulbs or as slips. If you're going to do them by seeds, like you got to start in like January in a greenhouse. It's a long process. But if you're doing large, if you do large bulbs, or if you start them as seeds in January, right about September is a good time to start harvesting things. And a lot of things, like sweet potatoes, they come out of the ground and they're not sweet. They're super starchy. So or a lot of potatoes come out, they're very tender and they would rot really quickly, and onions as well. So you have to do things to kind of cure them, to get them ready. Like sweet potatoes, you gotta create a humid environment because they're a tropical plant. So if you create a human environment, it kind of cures and it causes them to transfer a lot of carbohydrates to sugars. So if you have a humid area, like if you have a humidifier that maybe put in the closet with them, you can put in like a tarp on a hot day, keep them in there. A lot of my friends, I know it's sweet potato season because I see a whole bunch of sweet potatoes in the back of their inside of the car, like a back seat on the back little window area. That's a really great humid area to like cure your sweet potatoes. So you don't have to have a humid place. You can keep them in like a basement, a cool dark area. It's just going to take a while. The more humidity you can provide, the quicker they'll cure. And then they, again, try one before you eat all of them just to make sure it's sweet enough. And same with potatoes. Like potatoes, they're gonna you gotta like kind of let them dry out a little bit. Keep them in a dark, cool area for a while and let them toughen their skin up. So that way they'll actually last a while. And again, like don't eat any green potatoes. They're a bit toxic. That's usually a result of like a part of the potato was exposed to sunlight, and I don't understand the process, but I just know it would make it kind of sick if you eat it. And then onions, again, if you want to store your onions, if you want to eat them fresh, go for it. But if you want to store them, you need to kind of like sun dry them for a couple of days and then let them dry out in a cool ventilated area. And to basically the next, the plants get so dry that you're able to kind of like, pull off all the tops, and then you're left with like a onion that actually will store for a while. And then October. So October is it's the last month to plant your, if cover crop. So if you're wanting to do a cover crop and you wait to October, you can still do winter rye and winter wheat. They'll still germinate. But at this point, unless it's a very warm October, like clover is just not going to germinate at this point. But garlic, if you want to do garlic, you need to plant it in October. So how you plant garlic? Don't use store-bought. I mean, some of it's fine, but some of the times it's sprayed with stuff, but to keep it from like germinating. So you want to either get, garlic from the farmer's market, from a local farmer, or order it. Or once you start growing it, it's a good idea to like save, a couple heads of garlic, your best heads, and then, and use those every year. But ideally you break it the head apart, plant it, with the top things, pointed upward in a trench, 2 inches deep, 4 to 6 inches, wide, and then bury them, mulch them and water them really well for like a month or so. And then, like I said, usually they'll sprout and before winter hits, and then but they'll kind of go dormant over winter, and then they'll keep on growing in early spring. And then if you like bulbs, I don't know a whole lot about bulbs, but bulbs you plant you plant spring bulbs in the fall around October, and you plant fall bulbs in the spring. So that way it gives enough time to kind of sprout up. And then October maintenance, different things to think about, like keep on, keep things covered, mulch. A lot of times tomatoes at this point, they need a certain temperature to keep on, to ripen their fruit. So a lot of times at a certain point, they're not going to ripen. So you're going to have a lot of green tomatoes. And you can, there's a lot of great things you could do, not just fry them with, you can make like salsas and chutneys, and, green tomato muffins are really good. I'll share some recipes during our cooking class, but You can also do a thing where if you're just done with that tomato and you just want to get the last bit of tomatoes, pull the whole plant up and like hang it upside down in like a shed. It like freaks the plant out. It knows it's going to die, so it just like it rushes all, all this energy to the fruit to kind of ripen them up, somewhat quickly. Um, but yeah, and October is usually a good time. If you're not going to do a winter garden, to do like a fall cleanup, which the fall cleanup can be like removing any diseased plants. If they're diseased, throw them away. Don't compost them. Mulch the soil. Store the hoses if you have irrigation. Drain out the irrigation. Just you're just kind of getting your garden ready for winter. And some of the things to think about is like you don't want exposed soil. You don't want to leave your equipment out. You don't want, you want to, if possible, try to compost your plants. Some people like to leave their plants in, even after they died over the winter, because it provides habitat for some beneficial insects. But other people will cut them down and mulch your plants. Other people will pull them out and compost them. So it's really your preference. But yeah, October is the time to do it. And then November, if you are gonna do a winter garden, if you're able to get your plants decent size by October, then think about how to like keep them growing all winter long. And a lot of stuff, like a lot of things don't need a whole lot of protection. um like we grew like kale and broccoli and things and cabbages, and I didn't provide any protection. They did pretty well, but it was kind of a mild winter. If you get hit by a harsh winter, some of those things may not survive. But so if you want to be safe, you can provide these low tunnels, or if you have things like chard and things that are a little bit more tender and maybe they need a little protection, it's really it's like the winter winds that's going to get your plants. That's what really and the winter winds come from the north. So if you can find ways to block that winter winds, like maybe bring some straw bales or find some kind of something to block it up, that's great. Or that's why people do these hoop houses, because it protects your plants. If you do this remake, cloth one, and when it rains, it goes through. If you do a plastic one, you got to open it up to water. And plastic's great, but also it can be too hot. So on really hot days, you want to pull this off, or you're going to cook your plants. So that's why I kind of like this cloth, because it's just like you don't have to worry about ever. It's not as protective as plastic, but I don't have to air it out every day. So like I said, we'll have a whole class where we'll talk about the carpentry class. We'll talk about low tunnels and how to actually build these and the different types that we can build. If you're thinking about starting new gardens in grass areas, November is a great time to start sheet mulching areas and start prepping your soil. So that's when you lay cardboard and out, put mulch and compost and stuff on top of it, and just let it kind of die. The grass dies and all the insects come, and the worms, and they break up all the soil. And then by spring, it's really great. It's much more easier to dig into, and you got a little bit better start on your soil. And then December, so if you're not doing a winter garden, then you don't have to worry about anything. But if you are doing a winter garden, again, make sure they don't dry out. Even though you don't need to water it that much, you still need to monitor it. And as soon as it gets dries, you need to keep it somewhat wet. And then make sure it's protected. Like on this cold frame, they actually put these water bottles that actually will capture heat during the day and slowly let it out in the night. These big tacky Christmas lights actually have let off heat. So some people will keep their keep them warm. But oftentimes, if if you're doing the right plants and the right structures, you don't need all this stuff. But and like I said, we'll go over. We'll have a whole class more about on the cool structures. And then the last part of this, I just want to show you, different types of calendars that kind of help you, like the Johnny Seed Select is a really great one if you want, the exact dates to do everything. But then there's like University of Maryland has this really great one that kind of shows you general areas and when you should start planting things. And then yeah, there's a whole bunch of more. Aussie has one, Southern Exposure. Farmers Almanac has, a different, planting calendar for every, area in this country. A lots of different, options if you want to, like I said, you don't need to memorize all of this stuff. So that's why it's good to kind of go back and be like, okay, when do I plant, cabbage? Oh, I should seed cabbage in February and then plant it out in mid-March. And everyone, all of these are a little bit different too, but in general, like I said, you could be a little bit flexible. And then it's good to have a garden calendar, kind of like to write in what you want to do each month, like what you plan on doing, so you don't have to remember all this stuff in your head. So it's nice to have a plan. um, if you really wanted to get, into some crazy winter growing, you definitely want to read some Elliot Coleman. He does four season gardens up in Vermont. And yeah, he's got we have actually in our tool library, our tool share, we have a, library, and we have these books if anyone wants to, get really deep into, growing over the winter. And that's basically it. Yeah, thanks. I'll stick around if anyone has any questions.